I had been working at Megamart for 3 years when Rick Stevens became our new department manager. From the very beginning, it was clear he didn't think women belonged in leadership. During my first performance review under his supervision, he leaned across the desk and said, "Look, Sarah, you're great with customers and floor displays. But management, that's a different beast. Women just don't have what it takes." I sat there stunned. I'd been assistant manager for 8 months. I led a team of 12, exceeded every sales target, and had been mentored for promotion by my previous boss, Janet. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said. Rick leaned back, smiling smugly. "It's not personal. It's just biology. Men are natural leaders. Women are nurturers. You're great with emotional stuff, calming customers, smoothing over issues. But tough business decisions, negotiations, firing people, that takes a different backbone." I kept calm. "I handled the Morrison account last quarter. We boosted volume by 23%. Janet handled that. You just did paperwork," he replied. That was a lie, and we both knew it. From then on, the pattern was obvious. Rick handed key responsibilities to less experienced male employees. When corporate asked about advancement, he only named men. It didn't matter what we achieved. He'd already decided what women were good at. The breaking point came in March during a staff meeting. Corporate had opened applications for the Regional Management Program, a fast track to district leadership. "I'm nominating Dave Martinez," Rick said. Dave had been with the company 18 months. I had trained him. My sales were higher, my reviews stronger. Jennifer, one of my team leads, asked, "What about Sarah? She's outperformed everyone." Rick's smile disappeared. "Like I said, women don't have what it takes. Sarah's good at the nurturing stuff, but leadership requires toughness." The room fell silent. I could see the discomfort on every face, but no one spoke again. That night, I went home and started documenting. Every comment, every passed-over opportunity, every biased task assignment, and I started paying closer attention. Rick often disappeared for vendor meetings that weren't on the schedule, especially when Melissa Torres, a 22-year-old new hire, was working. Melissa got lighter duties, better shifts, and constant praise, despite average performance. One afternoon, Jennifer told me quietly. I saw them in his office, door closed, blinds drawn. After hours, probably nothing, but her tone said otherwise. I didn't have proof, not yet, but I kept documenting. Then Rick promoted Brad Chen to assistant manager, a role I'd been doing unofficially for months. That was the moment I decided to act. I requested a transfer downtown, citing personality conflict. It was approved within days. Once I was in my new role, I picked up the phone and called corporate HR. I'd like to report discriminatory behavior and possible sexual harassment. I had every detail organized: dates, direct quotes, witnesses, a folder of documentation I had been building quietly for months. I described Rick's comments about women being unfit for leadership, his biased promotions, his dismissive treatment of female employees, and the concerning behavior with Melissa. I didn't accuse. I reported what I had observed, professionally, calmly, but clearly. The investigation began immediately. A week later, I got a call from the HR director. "Sarah, we need to ask some follow-up questions. You're not the only one who's come forward." It turned out several women had submitted complaints after I left. Jennifer had reported being passed over for training programs. Lisa, from receiving, had documented Rick making comments about how women overthink simple tasks. Corporate was seeing a pattern. Then came Melissa. After a formal interview, she broke down. She admitted Rick had pressured her, offering better shifts and leniency in exchange for private meetings. She'd been afraid to speak up, thinking no one would believe her. That broke something in me. Not just anger, responsibility. 2 weeks later, Rick Stevens was fired for cause. The official reason: violations of company policy regarding harassment and discrimination. No severance, no goodbye party, just gone. But it didn't end there. As part of the investigation, corporate reviewed Rick's department metrics. They discovered he had been inflating performance numbers, taking credit for improvements driven by female employees, downplaying their contributions, and adjusting reports before submitting them to upper management. One of those reports had earned him the promotion to department manager. Corporate was furious. Their rising star was a fraud. His success built on discrimination, manipulation, and deception. 3 months later, I got a call from the district manager. "We've reviewed your performance files. It's clear most of the success under Rick was actually your work. We'd like to offer you the department manager position at your old store, with a 15% salary increase." I accepted. When I returned, it felt like stepping out of someone else's shadow. and finally into my own light. The mood on the floor was different, lighter, relieved. Colleagues welcomed me back with quiet smiles and even a few hugs. The culture under Rick had been toxic. We all knew it. Now we had a chance to rebuild. I started by implementing policies to ensure fairness. Promotions were reviewed by multiple managers. Performance reviews were backed by clear metrics. I also set up anonymous reporting for bias or harassment and made it very clear. This was a safe place to speak. And people did. Melissa came to me a few weeks later, nervous, but grateful. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing what I couldn't say out loud." I told her the truth. "You deserved better. Now we make sure everyone gets it." From that moment on, I wasn't just managing a store. I was helping rebuild trust, the kind that had been chipped away slowly, one unfair decision at a time, and it worked. Morale improved, turnover dropped, sales went up, people actually wanted to come to work again, and the team, especially the women who had once been ignored, started stepping into leadership roles with confidence. I launched a mentorship program to support them. We didn't just talk about business strategy. We talked about voice, value, and boundaries, about never shrinking yourself to fit someone else's limits. 1 year later, corporate took notice again. I was invited to speak at the annual Leadership Summit, the same event Rick once lobbied hard to attend. The auditorium was packed. I walked on stage, heart pounding, and shared my story. Not just the facts, but the fight, the loneliness, the silent moments I doubted myself, the power of documentation, the strength it takes to speak up when no one else will. "The best leaders," I said, "aren't always the ones with the loudest voices. Sometimes they're the ones who were ignored the longest and rose anyway." When I finished, the room stood in applause. I saw Melissa in the crowd, smiling with tears in her eyes. Jennifer stood too, hands clasped proudly. Later that evening, as I sat backstage reading messages from attendees, one name popped up in my inbox. "Rick Stevens." I froze for a second before opening it. "I was wrong about you. About a lot of things." That was it. No apology, no excuses. Just one sentence. I didn't respond. Because closure doesn't always require a reply. Sometimes it's enough to know you turned someone's dismissal into a reason to rise. I closed the message and walked back out to join my team. We were already discussing next quarter's plans. Promotions, new hires, growth strategies. Real work, honest work. In the end, Rick wasn't the story. We were. Not the pain he caused, but the progress we made after. Not the doors he tried to close, but the ones we opened wider. And as I stood beside the women I once fought for, now standing strong as leaders themselves, I realized something. The best revenge isn't someone else's fall. It's your own rise, on your terms, with integrity, and the power to change what comes next.